Good evening. My name is Juan Camilo Contreras, and together with my colleague Brigitte Carbonero, we are going to talk about the way in which we can save Somalia from poverty. For this video, we are first going to talk about Somalia, its history, and the social political reality in which it currently finds itself. We are also going to talk about why Somalia is such a poor country in the past. On this video, we are going to talk about the possible ways that we find so that Somalia can get out of poverty and give it period. And the end video, we will give a small conclusions.
Background Somalia. It is a country located in the south called Horn of Africa. It is of the African continent. To the west and northwest is bordered Ethiopia and Djibouti. To the south Kenya, to the north the Gulf of Aden, and to the east Indian Ocean. After a long civil war, the country was divided into small independent states without a power that governs it in its entirety. In 2024, different faction regimes an agreement to form transitional government unifying the country. Finally, in 2012, a new provisional constitution was approved that will govern the entire unified country. It fails in 2021 elections and the defeat of jihadists. It is considered a failed state by Somalia, or more euphemistically, a failed state. Its capital city and most populated is Mogadishu, and its currency are Somalia shillings. Somalia is the worst country to do business in. The Republic of Somalia is a federal state whose regime of government is currently transitory and subject to the truths of three international organizations and the third mediating stake, and with its structure, the transitional federal institutions adopted in the so-called Transitional Federal Charter of 24. The result of the agreements reached at the Nairobi Conference held the same year. The country was at war with Ethiopia between 1964 and 1987 over Ogaden's claims to autonomy. In 1991, the Authority of Somaliland, part of the North Sea Zone, declared itself independent. The political disintegration that the country has been suffering for decades makes it a perfect example of what failed state is all about. During the period from 1998 to 26, several self-proclaimed autonomous states appeared within Somalia. Unlike what happened with Somaliland, while all these movements sought autonomy, no nine independence proclamations. The current government installed in the capital managed to reform a unitary Somali state that generates effective proposals per pace, more consider the autonomous dynamics underneath the country. After years of conflict and instability, the economy, basically formed, is recovering very slowly. Its pillars are livestock and nascent telecommunications sector, construction service, remittances for diaspora, international aid, and humanitarian assistance. The country's economy is very vulnerable to the climate, as shown by the severe consequence of the drought that hit the country in 2017, affecting grazing, with employed 60% of the population reducing livestock exports, which represent about 60% of the total export earnings, and ripened the price of food and its imports. Several flooding conflict, economic suffocation, imminent desert lack of infestation, and the potential spread of COVID-19, threatening the safety and well-being of the Somalians 2.6 million internally displaced people. The government of Somalia has begun testing COVID-19 in the country. However, after decades of conflict and along with the global shortage of testing units, the country's health infrastructure is in a precarious position to respond in the event of a rapid spread of the virus. Somali police, migrants, and also the international community might reflect on the adequacy of establishing a rigid and exogenous political structure such as the more governed state. So really it produces schizophrenia to us, so an irrelevant questions consider that the state remains the parity of political organizations associated also with concepts such as welfare and democracy. Values made with fits and Western partner, but not with that's exported all over the world. But in Somalia, the state as we concept it today has only brought about war and the criminalization of social relations.
Somalia is one of the poorest countries of the planet. Its natural resources and scarce thought it has large and untapped and mineral reserves, among which uranium stands out. A large part of its population is nomadic or semi-nomadic and lives by raising livestock, so that livestock represent 40% of GDP and more than 50% of exports. Consecutive years of drought and armed conflict have resulted in a crop failure, livestock depletion, and rising food price. Somalia, until end of 70s, was a self-sufficient country in terms of food. However, the food crises for many years are systematic. Currently, a third of this population depends on humanitarian aid. The guidelines imposed by the IMF and the World Bank in 1980s in order to pay off the debt with the Paris Club entailed very tax cuts in public spending, health and education, and the implementation of liberalization policies, which opened the markets for the massive entry of subsidized North American and European products, such as rice and wheat. The multiplication of food aid. Furthermore, the recent massive purchase of fertile soil by foreign investors is making it difficult for Somalis to access land. The land in the hand of the very few people are used to produce grain for the international market. Food speculation, control of the business by industrialized agriculture, and land grabbing have a very negative impact of the Somali population, condemning them to the poverty and inability to access food. In this situation, the droughts that devastate the area lead to the country and permanent famine. Without the capacity to recover according to the Global Peace Indicator from the Institute for Economics and Peace. It is the one of the most insecure countries in the world. The continuous and the diverse armed conflicts have exhausted to the country. Since 1991, there has not been a government with the real power of the entire territory. The following data helps to understand the situation in which the country feels itself. 16% of children suffer from acute malnutrition, being extreme in 30% of the child population. Somalia has one of the highest rates on the ambulance children in the world. Only 2% of the children receive of the necessary vaccines, according to the international recommendations. In the first years of life, and 55% of children don't receive any vaccination. Only 29% of the population has access to drinking water. Tribal rivalities have caused to the displacement to 3,700 people victims of hunger and human rights abuse. 44% of internally displaced people depend on the buying water from sources more than 2 kilometers away. The primary school enrollment rate is only 30% for boys and 7% for girls. More than three-quarters of mothers with children under the age of 5 don't receive the education. The ratio of boys to girls is 9 of 10 in primary schools, but decreases 6 of 10 in secondary schools. This translates these literacy rates it's around 30% among women aged 50 to 44.
Why is Somalia poor? Armed conflicts are a very important cause for understanding population movements and the existence of refugees. Not only because there are people who have to escape because they fear for their lives, but also because the constant wars make poverty in Africa perpetual if see. It is the perfect breeding ground for poverty and hunger in Africa. It's often said that poverty generates poverty and that scarcity of resources can become a vicious circle, but far from being a problem without solutions. It is clear to humanitarian workers that they need to invest in improving their situation for tomorrow. For a country to establish finance, the United Nations needs solutions status that show that two adults or four children of every 10 inhabitants the average date and that there of children suffer from severe malnutrition. Infertility, Somalia meets these requirements to be declared a famine among its population. Somalia is considered by its inhabitants the most corrupt country in the world. More than 2.5 million Somalis suffer from the lack of rain and have therefore had to move to other regions of Africa. The rainy season between June and October can make the situation worse and have direct consequences for Somalis. As increases the risk of contracting diseases and infections, children are the part of population most vulnerable to diseases such as measles, diarrhea, malaria, or pneumonia. The countries of the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, Somalia, Kenya, Uganda, and Djibouti suffer from droughts and a major food crisis as a result. With less than 4 liters of water a day, life is very hard. In Somalia, access to drinking water is difficult, but the consumption of families as well as livestock and their plantations in addition in the streets of the most important cities is infrequent to see men in urban jets. The rebels control various areas on this country on the borders with neighboring countries, making life ever complicated. Life in the African country is unsustainable if we think that the inhabitants of Somalia lost their livestock and all their crops to the drought and their price of food rights every day. It is very difficult for them to move forward, so many decide to emigrate on other areas of Somalia and from Africa. Many Somalis hike to walk several kilometers to get water and food to the children that the UN has set out to help the sick. Mothers with children in their arms start the march towards this place. But on the way sometimes the force fails and few arrive at destination. Mogadishu is one of the cities that suffers the most from drought and famine. The vulnerable community, the poor, are the least likely to flee the country. Diseases and malnutrition ruin the streets on the Somali capital, but the access and security problems faced by humanitarian and make their tasks difficult in this area. But in the field the situation is no better. Land grabbing in a few hands, especially from foreign investors, and the expulsion of thousands of peasants from their lands had worsened the situation. These lands are used in the production of again from the international market and together with financial speculation of food. They have led to an increase in their price. A Somali citizen cannot access these expensive foods.
For Somalia to get out of poverty, it must change its development model because its economy is in the production of raw materials, because it seeks to add value to its products so that it can market them at better prices. Another possible solution for Somalia is to invest in the people and their education, but not only in the construction of schools, but in the training of well-trained teachers who act as knowledge multipliers and motivate their students to research. Additionally, Somalia must improve an internal and external communication channels. To do this, it must invest in the construction of the roads and heavily improve an internal flow to seek greater productivity. If Somalia finds the condition for any foreigner to arrive, it can encourage foreign investment by seeking that multinational and the world find in this country a reliable alternative to locate their factories and derive, bring development to the country that will trigger an increase in aggregate production and PIB per capita. However, the only way to establish effective and efficient action plans in the short, medium, and long term is through the action of the government leaders who act for the common benefit and the better quality of life for these inhabitants.
Where it's preventing effective action against smallest long-extending drought and humanitarian crisis, an estimate 6.2 million people, half of the country's population, are in direct need. More than 3 million are in crisis or emergency situations. What is preventing a more effective and sustained response to this humanitarian emergency is neither change for nature. It is the insurmountable war that Somalia has been experiencing since the 1990. Although aid organizations have already been able to reach nearly 2 million vulnerable people, they still face tremendous obstacles in trying to meet their goal. With the imminent threat of famine, donors urgently need to provide for more funding, since the crisis is largely exacerbated by rising food prices. Many families are Starving wild markets are overflowing with imported food. Aid organization must intensify small scale transfer of money to these families through cell phones. The administrations and states should work together with the ads working growth to ease restrictions and bureaucracy that hinder humanitarian operations. To drought victims, we need preventing access to international organizations, the government, and local ONGs, even though the territories it controls in southern and central Somalia are among the most affected.